The ship hummed with the deep, steady sound of alien engines. Jack sat in the corner of the training hall, tying the laces of his boots. He had been on the alien warship for only 3 days, and already he could feel every stare on his back. They were taller, stronger, and faster than humans, and they never let him forget it. Today, one stare was sharper than the rest. Her name was Sira, tall, with silver eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light, and skin marked with thin, dark patterns that looked like tattoos. She moved like she owned every inch of the room, because in her mind, she did. Jack ignored her at first, focusing on adjusting his gloves, but Sira didn't like being ignored. She stepped closer, the click of her boots echoing on the metal floor, and jabbed his shoulder with one long, sharp claw. The poke was light, almost playful, but there was something in her smirk that made it clear this was not a game. "You are soft," she said, her voice dripping with arrogance. "Your skin bends too easily." Little human, Jack glanced up, meeting her eyes, but said nothing. She took that as permission to continue. Another poke to his arm, this time harder. He could feel the tip of her claw through the fabric of his jacket. Around them, other alien soldiers began to watch. Some grinned, others whispered to each other. They enjoyed seeing the human tested, prodded, measured. Jack had been warned about this. The captain had told him, "They will push you, human, to see what you are made of. You can ignore them. Or you can make them stop, but once you make them stop, it will never be the same." Sira circled him like a predator. "Do humans have bones?" she asked loudly, making the others laugh. "Or are you just soft meat?" She jabbed his side. Again, this time quick and sharp. Jack's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice calm. "Careful," he said quietly. The single word made her pause for half a second. Then her smirk returned, wider than before. "Oh, did I hurt you?" she teased. "I thought humans liked to play." Jack stood slowly, towering over her by only a few inches. The difference in their size wasn't much, but the tension in the room grew heavier. Every alien I followed there. Movements now. A circle had formed without anyone saying a word. No one dared to interfere. This was a test, and they all wanted to see the outcome. Sira stepped even closer, so close that Jack could see the faint pulse in her neck, her silver. Eyes locked on his, she raised her claw again, slow, deliberate, and pressed it against his chest. The pressure was light, but the meaning was loud. "I can touch you whenever I want." Jack didn't move, didn't blink. Inside, his patience was wearing thin. He had been trained to deal with intimidation. But he also knew something these aliens didn't. Humans didn't always show their teeth before they bit. Sira's voice dropped low, almost a whisper. "Show me, little human. Show me what you can do." The crew's whispers turned to silence. Even the hum of the engine seemed to fade. Jack could feel every gaze on him, waiting, expecting him to back away. The air between them was tight. He could smell her. A strange mix of metal, spice, and something sharp like ozone. He thought of the captain's words again. Never start trouble, unless you're ready to finish it. But Sira didn't know something important. Jack wasn't the kind of man to let someone keep poking forever. She tapped his chest again, her smirk daring him to act. The sound of claw on fabric was soft, but sharp. Jack's lips curled into the smallest hint of a smile. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile a wolf might give before it leaps. Sira's eyes narrowed slightly. "Something funny, human?" she asked. Jack tilted his head. "You'll find out," he said simply. The aliens in the circle leaned forward. Some whispered bets under their breath. Would the human give in? Would he walk away? Or would he do something stupid? Jack took a slow step forward, closing the tiny gap between them. Sira didn't move back. Her silver eyes gleamed, her chin tilted up in challenge, for a long, slow moment. Nothing happened, but deep inside, Jack had already made his decision. She had crossed the line, and soon she was going to learn exactly what that meant. The warship's training hall felt smaller now. The walls seemed closer, the air hotter. Jack could hear his own heartbeat steady, calm, while the aliens around them waited for the moment to break, and in Sierra's eyes, Jack saw it. Not fear. Not yet, but the certainty that she believed she had already won. That belief was about to be shattered because Jack wasn't about to play the game by her rules. The training hall was quiet now. Dozens of alien soldiers stood in a loose circle. Their eyes locked on the human and the tall, silver-eyed warrior who had been poking him. The air was heavy, the kind of silence that comes right before a storm. Jack kept his gaze on Sierra. She was smiling again. But there was a different edge to it now. It was sharper. Like she was testing how far she could push before something snapped. And Jack knew she was about to find out. "You are very calm for someone about to be embarrassed," she said, her voice clear enough for the crowd to hear. Her words made the others chuckle. A few aliens muttered in their own language, probably placing bets. Jack caught one phrase, "soft meat," and his jaw tightened. Sierra circled him. Slowly, her boots making a faint metallic thump on the floor. Her claw traced the air just inches from his shoulder, as if daring to touch him again. "You don't talk much, human," she said. "Afraid your voice will crack." Jack didn't answer. His calm was deliberate. He knew silence was its own kind of pressure. It made the other person fill the space with more words. More moves, more mistakes. She finally stopped in front of him, her silver eyes boring into his. The training hall lights reflected in them, making them shine like liquid metal. Then, without warning, she jabbed him again. Harder this time, right in the chest. The sound of claw on cloth was sharp in the stillness. Jack stepped back, not because he was afraid, but because he wanted her to think he was giving her space. Her smirk widened. "Soft," she repeated. Easily moved, one of the alien soldiers to the side called out, "Make him kneel, Sierra." The crowd laughed. Jack glanced at the speaker just long enough to make him shut his mouth, then looked back at her. Sierra leaned forward, close enough for him to feel the warmth of her breath. It smelled faintly of spice and something metallic. "You could save yourself some trouble," she whispered. "All you have to do is admit humans are weak." Jack's expression didn't change. He spoke in a low voice, just loud enough for her to hear. "You're mistaking quiet for weakness." Her smirk faltered just a flicker before returning. "Oh? And what will you do, little human? Hit me?" "You are not fast enough," she said, her voice mocking, but her eyes now more alert. It was as if some part of her was suddenly aware she was walking a thin line. The captain's warning rang in Jack's mind again. If you make them stop, it will never be the same. He weighed the moment carefully. He could walk away, keep his head down, let them keep their joke going. But he also knew if he let her keep this up, it would never stop. Sierra tilted her head, studying him like prey that didn't know it was about to be caught. Then she reached out and hooked her claw onto the collar of his jacket. She pulled him forward just enough to bring his face closer to hers. Her voice was barely above a whisper. But it was heavy with challenge. "Show me what's under the soft skin." "Human," the crowd murmured, sensing they were seconds from a fight. Some of them took a step back. Others leaned in, their eyes wide. The low hum of the ship's engines seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of breathing, tense, controlled, and waiting. Jack's mind was steady now. He was no longer wondering if he should respond. He knew he would. The only question was, how? And that how was forming in his mind. Sharp and decisive, he stepped forward again, removing the little space left between them. Sierra didn't flinch. In fact, she seemed to push her shoulders back, as if accepting his closeness as another form of challenge. The faint patterns on her skin caught the light. She was beautiful in a fierce, dangerous way, the kind of beauty that came with claws. But beauty or not, Jack wasn't here to be a toy. Her silver eyes narrowed, and for the first time, she didn't speak right away. It was a small shift, but Jack noticed. She was curious now, curious, and maybe a little unsure of what he was going to do. "Last chance," she said finally. Her tone lighter but still sharp. "Admit you're weaker, or I'll make you regret it." Jack's reply was slow, deliberate. "You should stop poking the wolf," he said. The words landed heavier than she expected. A few aliens in the crowd raised their brows, exchanging quick glances. They understood the tone. It wasn't empty bravado. It was a warning. Syrah's lips curved into a half smile, then bite. "Human," she challenged, her voice low. Jack didn't move yet, but his eyes locked onto hers in a way that made her smile fade just a little. The crew didn't know it. But the next move would decide how every alien on the ship treated him from now on. The air between them was razor thin. Syrah's claw was still hooked in his collar. Her other hand hung loose at her side. But her body was tense, ready for whatever came next, and Jack, calm as ever, was already preparing to show her exactly what dominance meant in human terms. The crowd leaned forward. No one dared to speak. They knew something was about to happen, something no one on the ship would forget. The hall felt smaller now. Syrah's claw was still hooked in Jack's collar, pulling him just enough that he could feel the heat radiating from her body around them. The alien crew waited like hunters, watching two predators circle each other. No one dared to interrupt, not even the captain's guards. Jack's eyes stayed locked on hers, silver irises glowing faintly in the dim light. There was challenge there, but also curiosity, like she wanted to see if the soft human would finally snap. "Go on," Syrah whispered, her voice barely. Above the hum of the ship's engines, "Show me what you have." Jack tilted his head slightly. Studying her, she thought this was still her game. She thought she was in control because she had the height, the claws, the alien strength. But she didn't know one simple truth. Humans didn't need claws to bite. Without warning, Jack moved. It was fast, but not wild. One hand gripped her wrist, the one holding his collar, and the other came up to her shoulder before she could pull away. He stepped in and sank his teeth into the muscle just above her arm. It wasn't a savage, skin-tearing bite, but it was firm, deliberate, and filled with intent. A shock went through her body. Her claws flexed, scraping harmlessly at his jacket as a sharp breath escaped her lips. The crowd froze. Dozens of alien eyes widened in disbelief. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the circle. They knew what a bite meant in their culture. A bite was not an attack. It was a dominance claim. It was something warriors did to show rank over another. And Jack had just done it to one of their proudest fighters. Syrah didn't move at first. Her silver eyes were wide. And for the first time since he met her, she wasn't smirking. Her breath was shallow. Her gaze locked on his face. Jack released her slowly, stepping back just enough to meet her eyes again. "Now you know," he said, his voice calm. The words weren't shouted, but they hit the air like a hammer. The aliens in the crowd broke into whispers. Some looked shocked, others impressed. A few even smiled, a rare thing among their kind. It wasn't the act itself that shocked them most. It was that the human had done it without hesitation, without fear. Syrah touched the spot where his teeth had pressed into her skin. Her fingers lingered there, tracing the faint warmth. Her lips parted like she was going to speak, but no words came for a warrior like her. This was new. No one bit her. No one dared. Jack didn't break eye contact. He stood steady, his posture loose but ready. If she attacked, he was prepared. But deep down, he doubted she would. He could see the shift in her eyes already. She wasn't looking at him like prey anymore. The silence stretched, finally. One of the alien soldiers muttered something in their native tongue. Jack didn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. Respect mixed with surprise. Sierra finally moved, stepping back one pace, her chin lifted, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke, her voice level but louder so the others could hear. He is not to be touched. A ripple went through the crowd. Some nodded, some frowned. But no one laughed anymore. The air felt different now, heavier, but in a way that worked in Jack's favor. Jack gave a small nod, as if agreeing to a silent truce. But inside, he knew this wasn't over. Not in the sense of danger, but something else. Sierra wasn't the type to just walk away and forget. He could already tell she was going to remember this moment for a long time as the crew slowly dispersed. Still murmuring about what they'd seen, Sierra stayed where she was, watching him. Her silver eyes followed his every movement until he stepped out of the training hall. Jack didn't look back, but he could feel her gaze like heat on his back. When the door slid shut behind him, the hum of the hallway felt louder. He took a slow breath. He had made his point, but he had also crossed a line, and on a ship full of alien warriors, crossing lines could lead to unexpected consequences. Back in the hall, Sierra's claw traced the mark where his teeth had been. Her expression was thoughtful now, not mocking. She had been challenged in her own way, and part of her didn't hate it. The story of the human's bite spread through the ship faster than the sound of the engines. By the next cycle, every corridor Jack walked down carried whispers. Some aliens stared openly, others avoided his eyes. A few even gave small nods of respect. It was a shift he could feel in the air. The mocking looks were gone, replaced with something heavier. Jack didn't seek out Sierra that day. He didn't have to. Wherever he went, he could sense her nearby. Sometimes she was in the corner of a room, speaking to other warriors, but watching him out of the side of her glowing silver eyes. Other times, she would pass him in the hall without a word, her gaze sliding over him like a blade, but she never poked him again. In the mess hall, the changes became even clearer. Before, the crew would make him wait at the end of the line. Now, no one stepped in front of him. Some even moved aside, pretending it was coincidence when he sat down to eat. There were no mocking comments about soft human food, only quiet observation. It wasn't friendliness, but it was respect. And on a ship like this, respect was worth more than comfort. But Sierra? She was the strangest part of all. Jack had expected her to retaliate, to try and prove she was still above him. Instead, she seemed to have claimed him. Whenever another alien warrior came too close, Sierra would appear. Sometimes with just a stare, other times with a few quiet words in their language that sent them walking away. One evening, as Jack was working on a damaged panel in one of the lower decks, he heard footsteps behind him. He didn't have to turn to know it was her. "Human," she said simply. Jack kept working. "Yes." "You surprised me," she said, her tone unreadable. "Good." Jack replied without looking up. She stepped closer, the scent of spice and metal filling the air again. "I thought humans only bared teeth in fear," she said. Jack looked at her then, meeting her gaze. "Then you learned something." She studied him for a long moment, as if trying to understand what made him act the way he did. Then she gave the faintest nod. "I did," she said, and turned to leave. But just before she walked away, she added, "No one touches you now, not without my word." Jack frowned. He hadn't asked for her protection. But on a ship full of people who could crush him with one hand, it wasn't the worst thing to have. The next few days only deepened the change. Sierra started sitting near him during meals, not speaking much, but always present. She began showing him alien combat forms in the training hall, correcting his stance with a firm hand on his shoulder or wrist. The crew watched this with interest. It was unheard of for a warrior like Sierra to train someone she had once mocked. One night, While most of the ship slept, Jack found himself alone in the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly outside. He was lost in thought when he heard the door slide open. Sierra entered silently, stopping beside him for a long while. They said nothing, just stared at the void together. Finally, she spoke, her voice softer than usual. "In my people's law, a bite is a mark of dominance. Yes. But it is also a mark of belonging." Jack turned his head slightly. "Belonging." She nodded. "It means you have challenged, and we have accepted you." As one of us, Jack didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure if she meant one of us as a warrior, or one of us as something more personal. Her silver eyes stayed on the stars, but he could feel the weight of her words. When she finally left, Jack remained at the window. The ship felt different now, not safer, exactly, but less hostile, still. He couldn't shake the feeling that the bite had started something he didn't fully understand, and that, whatever it was, it wasn't over. Later, in the training hall, another small test came. A young alien soldier, bigger than Jack, but lower in rank, approached him with a mocking smile. Before Jack could react, Sierra stepped between them. Her voice was sharp. "He is not for you," she said in their language. The soldier froze, muttered something, and backed away. Jack caught the way the crew was watching. More whispers, more glances. That night, lying in his small quarters, Jack thought about what had happened. He'd come aboard this ship as an outsider. Now he was still an outsider, but one the crew looked at differently. And all of it had changed in one single moment. The bite hadn't just been about dominance. It had been a message, one Sarah had understood better than anyone, and now, it seemed, she was making sure the entire ship understood it too. Jack woke to the quiet hum of the ship, the same metal walls, the same narrow bunk, the same distant rumble of alien engines. But something had changed, not in the ship, but in the way people moved around him. He felt it everywhere he went. They no longer looked at him like he was prey. Now they looked at him like he was citrate. Now they looked at him like he was claimed. At first, Jack thought it was just Sierra's presence. She had made it clear no one could touch him without her word. But the change ran deeper than that. In the mess hall, warriors who once laughed at him now greeted him with short nods. In the corridors, smaller crew members stepped aside as he passed. Even the engineers who usually ignored him began asking short questions about his work. It was as if one bite had rewritten the rules. Sierra herself was different too. She didn't poke, she didn't mock, she didn't even smirk at him the way she used to. Instead, she began to train with him. Every day after her duties, she would meet him in the training hall. She showed him alien combat techniques, how to strike low, how to block with speed instead of strength. When he stumbled, she corrected him with a firm but controlled grip on his arm or shoulder. When he did well, she gave the smallest approving nod. Jack didn't trust the sudden shift completely. He knew warriors like her didn't change for no reason. If she was keeping him close, there had to be more to it. One afternoon during training, she stopped in the middle of a move and studied him. "You learn quickly," she said. Jack raised a brow, surprised. She tilted her head slightly, not surprised. Interested. Before he could ask what she meant, she stepped back, signaling the session was over. It was the kind of half answer that left him thinking about it all day. The next change came in the form of food. Jack was used to the small rations given to humans aboard alien ships, enough to survive, not enough to enjoy. But now, when the mess hall served the warriors their richer, spiced meals, a small plate would appear at his table. He never saw who brought it. He didn't need to ask. One evening, after training, he tried to confront her about it. "You don't have to keep doing this," he said. Sierra glanced at him. "Doing what?" "Protecting me. Bringing me things. You don't owe me anything." She gave him a look that was almost amused. "It is not about owing," she said simply. When he waited for her to explain, she didn't. The crew noticed the change too. In the corridors, whispers followed them. Some were impressed, some confused, some even suspicious. It wasn't normal for a warrior of Syrah's standing to be so close to a human, especially one who had challenged her. One night, Jack found himself alone in the maintenance bay. The sound of tools clinking echoed in the large space. He was fixing a coolant pipe when he heard the door slide open. Syrah stepped inside, silent as ever, but instead of watching him work, she walked over and handed him a small, carved object. "What's this?" Jack asked, turning it in his hand. It was made of dark metal, shaped like a curved fang. "A tokium." Syrah said, "It means you fought and were not broken." Jack looked at it, then at her. "And if I wear it?" "Ah!" She gave a faint smile. "Then they will know." For a moment, Jack didn't know what to say. It wasn't just a gift, it was a declaration. If he wore it, every alien on the ship would see him as part of her circle. It was protection, but it was also something else, something deeper. The more time they spent together, the more Jack noticed subtle changes in her tone. When she spoke to others, her voice was hard, commanding. But with him, it was quieter, smoother. Sometimes, she even asked questions about Earth, small things, like what oceans smelled like, or what human cities sounded like at night. Jack realized something then. Syrah wasn't just protecting him for dominance or pride. She was curious. The bite had marked him in her culture. Yes. But it had also marked him in her mind. Now, she wanted to know who this human really was. Still, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that all of this was building toward something. The looks from the crew were changing, not just toward him, but toward her. Some of them didn't like how close she was getting to the human. He could see it in the way they stood a little stiffer when she walked by. Hear it in the quiet words exchanged after they thought she was gone. It was a strange new balance. One bite had turned enemies into allies, turned mockery into respect. But it had also put a target on both of their backs, and Jack had the uneasy feeling that sooner or later, someone was going to test just how far Syrah's protection and his own dominance really went. The uneasy peace didn't last long. On the third week after the bite, a new warship docked with theirs. The corridors filled with the sound of heavy boots and strange voices. Warriors from the visiting ship walked in groups, their armor darker, their eyes sharper. Jack could feel their stares the moment they saw him. Some were curious, some hostile, and one of them, a towering alien with thick black markings on his skin, didn't bother to hide his contempt. His name was Vark. Jack heard it whispered in the mess hall even before they met face to face. He was a high-ranking fighter, known for winning challenges by breaking bones. When his gaze landed on Jack for the first time, it was the same look a predator gives when spotting something it thinks will be easy prey. It happened in the training hall. Jack was working drills with Syrah when Vark entered. The crowd parted for him, not out of respect, but out of wariness. His eyes swept the room until they locked on Jack. Then a slow, mocking smile spread across his face. "So this is the human I've heard about," Vark said in a low, rumbling voice. The other warriors watched. Sensing something was about to happen, Jack didn't answer. Syrah stepped slightly. In front of him, her silver eyes narrowing, "He is not yours to touch," she said in her native tongue, her voice sharp. Vark chuckled. "You've grown soft, Syrah," he said. "Keeping pets now." A ripple of whispers moved through the room. Jack's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice calm. "You want something?" he asked. Vark's smile widened. "I want to see if the stories are true. They say you bit Syrah. They say she lets you stand beside her like an equal. I want to see why." The room seemed to close in. Every pair of eyes was on them. Jack knew what this was, a public challenge. If he refused, everything Syrah had done to protect him would vanish. If he accepted, and lost. He might not walk away at all. Before Jack could speak, Sierra stepped closer to Vark. Her voice was low but dangerous. "Step away," she said. But Vark only laughed. "You defend him like a mate," he said, loud enough for the whole hall to hear. The words hung in the air like a spark above dry wood. The crowd murmured. Even Jack felt the tension spike. He stepped forward before Sarah could answer. "If you want to test me," Jack said, "then test me." A cheer broke out from some of the watching warriors. The challenge had been made, and there was no taking it back. Vark grinned, his teeth sharp and uneven. "Good," he said. "We do it now." The crowd shifted to form a circle around them. The training hall's metal floor echoed under their steps. Sierra stood at the edge, her arms crossed, but her eyes locked on Jack. She didn't look worried, but she didn't look relaxed either. Vark was taller and heavier, his muscles like carved stone under his armor. But Jack had been learning weeks of training with Sierra had taught him how to move faster, strike at angles, and use his smaller size to his advantage. The first move came fast. Vark lunged with surprising speed, his arms swinging in a wide arc. Jack ducked under it, pivoting to the side. The crowd shouted in surprise. Vark turned quickly, grinning. "Not bad, human," he said. "But I'm not here to dance." The next attack was heavier, a two-handed shove meant to send Jack sprawling. Jack absorbed the impact by stepping back, letting Vark's momentum carry him forward. Then Jack struck, not with a fist, but with the heel of his hand to the side of Vark's neck. It didn't knock him down, but it made him pause around them. The crew began to murmur in approval. Jack kept moving, never letting himself get cornered. But Vark was strong, and each attack was like a hammer blow. One solid hit could end it. Jack's mind was sharp. He remembered something Sarah had told him during training. You don't have to overpower them. You just have to make them believe you could. When Vark came at him again, Jack stepped inside his guard. Their bodies collided. And before Vark could react, Jack's teeth were at his shoulder. He didn't bite hard, but he bit just enough. The same way he had with Sarah. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Vark froze, shock in his eyes. It was the same message, dominance. Jack released him and stepped back, his gaze steady. "You wanted to see why," he said quietly. "Now you know." The crowd erupted into shouts, some laughing, some cheering. Vark's expression shifted not to rage, but to something closer to respect. He gave a short nod. "Not bad, human," he said, before stepping out of the circle. Sierra approached Jack, her expression unreadable. But when she stopped in front of him, she said only one thing. "You just made the whole ship talk for a month." Jack smirked slightly. "Good," he said. But deep down, he knew this wasn't just about winning. The bite was becoming more than a show of dominance. It was changing everything. The challenge with Vark became the most talked about moment on the warship. By the next day, every alien in the corridors seemed to know exactly how it had ended. The human had stood his ground, moved like a fighter, and bit the challenger without fear. To them, it wasn't just a fight, it was a statement. And now, that statement had spread through the ship like fire. Jack noticed the change the moment he stepped into the mess hall that morning. Conversations paused when he entered. Some warriors gave short nods, others stared for a moment before going back to their meals. There were no jeers, no mocking smirks. Instead, there was space made for him at the long metal tables. Not forced space, respectful space. Sierra was already there, sitting at the far end of the table with a plate of the richer, spiced warrior food. When Jack walked over, she shifted her own plate slightly toward him. It wasn't an offer, exactly. More like a silent reminder that he was included. Jack sat down without a word. They ate in the quiet, the kind of quiet that was comfortable. But even in silence, the air between them felt charged. After breakfast, they trained together. This time, there was no mocking. No testing. Sarah corrected his stance, adjusted his grip, and even demonstrated new moves she hadn't shown him before. The crowd watching was smaller now. The novelty had worn off, but the ones who stayed were the ones who understood. They weren't watching to see if the human would fail anymore. They were watching to learn how he didn't. Later that day, the captain himself called for them. Jack entered the command deck to find Sarah already standing there, her arms folded. The captain, a tall, scarred alien with a voice like grinding stone, studied Jack for a long moment before speaking. "You've caused a stir," the captain said. Jack kept his voice even. "I didn't start it." "No," the captain agreed, "but you finished it twice." The captain's gaze moved between Jack and Sarah. "I've seen warriors take cycles to earn what you've earned in days," he said. "Respect. And the right to walk without looking over their shoulder." Jack didn't respond. He knew respect on a ship like this wasn't permanent. It had to be maintained. When they left the captain's quarters, Sarah walked beside him down the long, steel corridor. "You've changed the way they look at you," she said. Jack glanced at her. "No, we changed it." She gave a small, almost amused sound. "Maybe," she said, "but the bite. That was yours alone that evening." A small gathering formed in the training hall. Not a challenge, a celebration, though the aliens would never use that word. It was an old tradition when a warrior proved themselves. They stood in the center of the circle, while others acknowledged them. Jack had no idea they intended to include him when he stepped into the hall with Sarah. The circle was already formed. Dozens of warriors stood shoulder to shoulder, their faces serious, but their eyes sharp with interest. Vark was there too, leaning against the wall. When Jack's eyes met his, Vark gave a slow, deliberate nod. A silent truce. Sarah stepped forward and spoke in her native tongue. Her voice carrying through the hall, she told them of the first bite, of the challenge of the second bite that had ended it. Her words were clipped and warrior-like, but Jack could feel the weight in them. When she finished, she turned toward him and bared the side of her neck. It was a gesture he recognized from the stories she'd told, a sign of deep respect. Given only to those considered equals, the crowd murmured. A few even gave the gesture as well. It wasn't everyone. Respect was never unanimous, but it was enough. Jack didn't copy the gesture exactly. Instead, he stepped closer, met her silver eyes, and said, "Guess we're even now." A small smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "Not even," she said quietly. "We've only started." When the gathering broke apart, Jack and Sarah left together. The corridors felt different now, not because they were safer, but because every step carried a new weight. He wasn't just the human anymore. He was the human who bit a warrior and made her stand beside him. In his quarters that night, Jack lay awake longer than usual. He thought about the journey from the first mocking poke to this moment. The bite had been an instinct, a simple act meant to end her arrogance. But it had turned into something far greater. It had earned him protection, training, and though neither of them said it, a strange, fierce bond with Sarah. He didn't know what challenges would come next, but he knew one thing. Next time someone tested him, he wouldn't be standing alone. Because somewhere on this warship, a silver-eyed warrior was watching. And she had already decided no one would touch him without her word.